This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Experience scenic views and private rooms that let you stretch out. Enjoy hassle-free travel as it should be on Amtrak. Book some Z's at Amtrak.com. Amtrak. Retrain travel.
If you work in university maintenance, Grainger considers you an MVP because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Grainger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more. And all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, visit Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Content warning, this episode contains discussion of the murder of 2 girls as well as sensitive topics like sexual assault. So today was the second and presumably final day of jury selection. We have a jury in the Delphi murders case, actually a jury of 12 and then 4 alternates, and some questions. And we're going to be getting to all of that in this episode. My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
And this is The Murder Sheet.
We're a true crime podcast focused on original reporting, interviews, and deep dives into murder cases. We're The Murder Sheet.
And this is The Delphi Murders. Richard Allen on trial. Jury selection. Day 2.
I'd like to start by mentioning something that I will circle back to and address again towards the end of the program. Well, actually, before I start, we were supposed to mention something yesterday that we forgot to mention, which is that Anya and I are writing a book on the Delphi murders case.
Yeah, we kind of forgot to mention that. Whoops. So we are going to be coming out with a book, and, you know, in case you're wondering, no, it is not finished at this point because the story's not over. One of the things that was really important to us when working on this was that we would get an opportunity to tell the entire story, including the story of trial. So this won't be released until the summer of 2025. And it's a long way off, but we're really honored to be doing this. And we just want you to know that we take it incredibly seriously. We want this book to be inclusive of a lot of different viewpoints and really get to a lot of, questions in the case and sort of the human story of this tragedy.
And if you're so inclined, go to Amazon, look up my name or Anya's name, and pre-order the book.
Yeah, we'll include links, and I'm sure there'll be other places in addition to Amazon that you can pre-order it. But pre-orders support us a lot, and we really appreciate it. And we just appreciate all the positive feedback we've gotten on the fact that we're writing a book so far. And just thank you. And again, we're honored, and we take this very seriously.
So with that said, I want to get back to what I was saying a minute ago. I want to start with something that I will talk more about towards the end of the program. I also suspect I will be saying quite a bit more of it in coming days and weeks, which is I feel that Judge Gull has done a fine job of safeguarding Richard Allen's rights. I think, maybe you can nitpick and say, well, I wish she would make some rulings quicker. I wish the rulings would be more detailed. And maybe you might disagree with a ruling or two. But she's done a good job of protecting his rights in this process. But other than that, I feel there is a real competence problem with Judge Gull and her team in Allen County. And I'm mentioning this at the top because this is something else we forgot to mention yesterday, and it happened again today, which is a number of prospective jurors prior to the court session were out and about. I think some of them were actually in line with members of the public. Some of them wandered into the courtroom and were talking to, members of the public.
Not about the case, just...
Well, I don't know what they were talking about.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming it was... When I saw somebody, it was more of like, where am I supposed to go?
But at the very least, this should have been organized in a way that this wouldn't happen.
I don't understand why there weren't bailiffs posted out all the entrances anticipating this and guiding people where they needed to go. It's possible that these people all just made a mistake and they were given clear instructions on where to go and they just made a mistake. But I think you have to account for human error. And there were enough people wandering around that it seemed like a lot of people made that mistake. And so, yes, it didn't really seem well organized in that sense.
Yes. With that said... I want to mention Richard Allen came into the courtroom today, I think a little bit before 9.
Yeah. He was unshackled swiftly. He was wearing a mint green button-down shirt and glasses that sat atop his head. I never saw him actually use those glasses.
He never used the glasses. So all day, these glasses like on his forehead/head. I'm sure you've seen people...
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe this, but
and then there was an odd moment with him where for an extended time he looked as if he was in prayer. Obviously, I don't know if he was praying, but he had his head bowed and his hands folded together.
Yeah, what did you make of that?
I don't know. I don't want to get into someone's head, but what did you make of it?
I don't know. I guess it depends on what you're looking at. I mean, unclear if praying or just resting in a strange way, but certainly something that seemed to mimic the gesture, I suppose, the gestures commonly associated with prayer in Christianity, right? Like that's what prayer looks like to people who are Christians, and so that's it was as if he was in prayer.
Yes. A couple of members of Libby's family were present today.
That's correct. There were also members of Abby's family present. So you had members of both families present today, and seated in the back. So they, actually, weirdly enough, in this situation, usually the families are in front. In this situation, the public / media and then the media were up in the front. So I doubt the people in the back could even hear anything. So that was kind of these are very bad acoustics in this courtroom. Okay, it's a beautiful courtroom, but terrible acoustics. Like you can't hear anything half the time.
Maybe this goes back to that competence issue I was mentioning.
Well, in fairness, it's an old building with a skylight, so I think that they're working against, tradition there.
And then there was some news early on. 3 of the jurors who were picked yesterday were excused. And so that means we then had to go back and find replacements.
That left it with that. So we went down to 11, right? So we didn't even have a full jury at the beginning of this day.
And we need to have a total of 16.
Yes.
Because we need 12 jurors and 4 alternates. So it was a bit ominous that we'd lost 3 jurors and the trial had not even started.
In addition to that, we learned that the state had used 9 strikes the previous day, and the defense had used 7 strikes. We described earlier strikes are when a prospective juror is removed. So I believe you talked about strikes for cause where there is like some specific reason, like this person can't be fair, or they know people in the case, and that's just get them out of here.
And then there's peremptory strikes. Those are the strikes. Each side gets a number of those. You can strike a person for any reason not related to, like trying to get all members of a particular gender or racial background off the case. For instance, I don't know who dismissed this person today, but there was a juror today, a prospective juror, who mentioned, well, I was on a jury trial 50 years ago, and in that trial it was 10-2 for conviction, and I was one of the 2 holdouts who refused to convict and triggered a mistrial. So I would imagine if you were a member of the prosecution,
get him out of here.
Wait a minute, I've got a bad feeling about this guy. Now, just the fact that he was a holdout in a jury trial 50 years ago, that's not a legal cause.
No, maybe he was totally right. Maybe, he was one of the people who, like, it doesn't mean he would necessarily find that way in every case.
But maybe it would give you a bit of a feeling like, well, maybe I can do better. Yeah. If you're the prosecutors, that would be an example of why you might want to use.
And
the
defense might have things if somebody is saying, if there's a similar thing where maybe he was one of the holdouts for conviction, maybe they would say, this doesn't bode well. This is I mean, to use a very silly parlance, it's more of the vibe strike, right? It doesn't have to be anything specific. It's just like no thank you.
Yeah, I get some bad vibes here, so let's just move on.
Let's not do it.
You want to talk about some of the back and forth between the attorneys and the judge prior to the first panel coming in?
It got, I don't want to say heated, maybe a little heated. Previously, we'd seen a lot of cordiality. I mean, heat is probably the wrong word. There was definitely a conflict. So there was a lot of discussion where Andrew Baldwin, one of the defense attorneys, brought up something he was at. I mean, I don't really understand all the legal stuff around this, Kevin, so you're going to have to help me out. But what it boiled down to was Baldwin brought something up, and there was a conflict between him, Nicholas McClelland, the prosecutor, and Judge Francis Gull, the presiding
Baldwin was saying,
judge in this case.
Nick McClelland is telling people that beyond a reasonable doubt, it just means you have to be firmly convinced. And Baldwin said, well, you need more than that. And McClelland said, well, firmly convinced is, that's what it says in the definition.
In Indiana, yeah.
In Indiana. And he said, and I had to object when Baldwin was doing the stuff earlier because yesterday he was trying to condition the jury because he was asking how they would vote in this case or trying to indirectly ask how they would vote.
We didn't really talk about that in our previous episode, and maybe I kind of missed it. But what is conditioning a jury? What was he complaining about? Why is that a problem? Was Baldwin doing it? Because I praised Baldwin's performance yesterday.
Baldwin's style was great, but yeah, it's a fine line because obviously both sides want to know how the jury is going to vote. That helps them pick the jury, but you can't just ask that. So it's like what I said yesterday.
Yeah, you did say that.
Where you if you want to know how much money someone makes, you don't ask them that question. You say, oh, what kind of car do you drive? Or where do you live? Or what restaurants do you like? And that gives you an idea. So you just kind of dance around that.
Yeah. And
try to get the information from the jurors in an indirect way. And in essence, McClelland felt Baldwin went too far.
And because he was pressing it pretty far, like, could you find this guy innocent? Wasn't it something like that? Like, or like, do you think he's guilty? He was getting pretty direct at one point. And that was when McClelland objected.
Yeah.
And looking back at my notes, yeah, I remember looking back at them today, I was like, yeah, he was pretty direct there. I didn't realize as a non-lawyer that would even be a problem, but it makes sense. You're supposed to dance around it, I guess.
Yeah, dance around it a bit. So I want to mention then.
But anyways, but basically, Gull came down on McClelland's side and was very much like you were conditioning, and based on what we saw, yeah, I can. Yeah, I mean that's fair.
Gull then announced what the schedule was going to be. We're going to finish picking the jury today. This will be important later. Put a pin in this. We're going to finish picking the jury today. And then after that, we're going to rule on all the outstanding motions today, except for one, which has witnesses, and we'll take care of that one Thursday morning. So that is what everybody was told the plan was. Put a pin in that. And then basically, a new group of 52 prospective jurors came in. So this was a different group than the 52 that were in yesterday. So that meant they had to get the same preparatory speeches from Judge Gull explaining the process that the previous group got. And they also had to have McClelland and his fellow prosecutors, James Luttrell and Stacey Diener, introduce themselves, give the name of their witnesses. They had to have Brad Rosie, Jennifer Ajay, and Andrew Baldwin introduce themselves, give their witnesses, and so on. And Gull had to read the charges. And then it was time, I believe, for the mini opening statements.
Enough with overcomplicating your wardrobe. Stop buying trendy, cheap stuff that doesn't last. Curate your style with high-quality pieces that you can mix and match. Our wonderful sponsor, Quince, can help you out with that.
They are all about accessible luxury. These are the premium, everyday essentials that you can wear all the time, even as the seasons change.
We love their comfortable, lightweight Mongolian cashmere sweaters. They're perfect for spring. We're also excited to try out their linen bottoms and shorts and European jersey linen t-shirts.
Not only will you be getting high-quality clothing for less, it's also important to know that Quince only pairs with ethical factories and artisans that set rigorous standards for craftsmanship. They save you money by cutting out the middleman.
Quince's wonderful silk pieces have been some of my go-tos this year. I love their black washable silk dress and black washable silk skirt. They elevate my style while being so easy to wash and maintain and pair with other clothes.
Right now, go to quince.com/msheet for free shipping and 365-day returns. That is a full year to build your wardrobe and love it. And you will. It's now available in Canada too. Don't keep settling for clothes that don't last. Go to quince.com/msheet for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/msheet.
When we started the Murder Sheet, we didn't really know if podcasting was even going to work out for us in the long run. Like, what if no one listens to us? That would be awkward. I'm really glad we tuned out those doubts and went for it, because it's been an absolute dream come true. But the kind of uncertainty we face is what stops people from betting on themselves, chasing their dreams, and starting their own businesses.
For all of you out there looking to kickstart your own dreams, partnering with Shopify is one of the best decisions you can make. It gets you on the right track from day one. They take the uncertainty out of business.
Shopify is your one-stop commerce platform that supports millions of businesses around the world.
Shopify makes you efficient and fast. You can upload new products, improve existing products. Shopify's AI tools can help you with product descriptions, page headlines, and better product photography.
And don't worry about nobody buying your products. They help you get the word out. Shopify puts the power of a whole marketing team behind you. You can create email and social media campaigns with just a few clicks.
Shopify supports you with inventory management, international shipping, processing returns, and more. Whatever the challenge, they're there to make things quicker and more convenient. It's time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/msheet. Go to shopify.com/msheet. That's shopify.com/msheet.
That's my cat Lulu. She's perfectly healthy, but I'm not waiting for issues to pop up. I'm feeding her new Purina One whole body support, proactive nutrition supporting her 5 key systems. It's Purina One's most advanced formula, helping us stay ahead at mealtime so we can stay ahead for a lifetime.
Purina One, a difference from day one. Try new Purina One whole body support. Just say, Alexa, add to cart.
Alexa, add to cart.
We had these yesterday. We had them today. In some ways, they were pretty similar.
But they also both had some details in them that I think at least members of the press that we spoke to afterwards really latched onto. And so why would you do that? Well, help carry the media narrative. I mean, that helps kind of...
Yeah, let's be blunt. There was a lot of repetition today from yesterday.
Yes.
So if you're one of these lawyers and you want to get your story and your angle in the press, put in something different. Something that will grab the attention.
And in addition to that, maybe more importantly, you're sort of letting the prospective jurors know, I've got a winning case. You know, you want them on your side. You don't want them to sit up there and being like, what? Like, okay, these people are going to lose for either side. So both sides are going to make their case sound as strong as possible. And that's important to remember for both sides because there's going to be a lack of context. You're not going to have, for instance, if Kevin's up there prosecuting me for stealing cereal, to use our typical silly example, he's not going to say, well, Anya's, fingerprints were found in the grocery store where there was this robbery, but they were found actually in the vegetable section, and she was actually on camera there earlier that day, so maybe that kind of complicated. He's not going to add in all the bad news. He's just going to say her fingerprints were in the grocery store, and then the jury's going to be like, oh, they got her. And then later on in trial, they might be like, oh, wait, okay, well, that's a little more complicated. Just pointing that out.
So do you want to talk a bit about Prosecutor McClelland's opening statement? And I'll mention that a reporter said, there was something new in it. And I just went back to my notes from yesterday, and that detail was in my notes.
I knew it, and I said that. But, it's understandable because we're all getting inundated with information, and there's no way to check it if it's not in your notes because it's not being broadcast. So...
we're talking more about that later, too. A lot more.
But anyways, I did think it was in the previous day, but I'll emphasize it because I think it caught a lot of people's attention today. So the thing that was interesting that a lot of people focused on with McClelland's was the fact that he claims that bridge guy, who he says is Richard Allen, was interrupted. That he was interrupted during the sort of what was supposed to be an abduction, possible sexual assault of the two victims, Liberty German and Abigail Williams, and that he was interrupted. So this does what people were talking about outside and what people were speculating about, like how could that happen? Did somebody, was this a witness? Like how was he interrupted? What happened to interrupt him? And what does this tell us about the case? So I think that was something that kind of people focused on that side of things.
Andrew Baldwin's mini opening was maybe a bit stronger and a bit more dramatic than the one he did yesterday.
He improved. I feel like McClelland was sort of at the same level, which was a very high level. Baldwin yesterday was good. Today, I think better.
Yeah, I would agree. So one of the details he mentioned that was not in his remarks yesterday, he was talking about the confessions that Richard Allen gave, and he was saying, well, no, there's details in these confessions that are not accurate. And he says, for instance, Richard Allen says that I think I killed my family and my grandchildren, and of course, Richard Allen did not kill his family, and as far as we know, does not have any grandchildren. And I think that was mentioned.
Yeah, that was
earlier.
That was not in what Deer, but like in a previous hearing a long time ago, right?
Right, and I thought at the time, and I could be wrong. This just could be my crazy off the wall interpretation. I interpret it as him speaking kind of symbolically, like I did something so terrible it killed their reputations. And didn't just kill their reputations and their good name. It even goes down to my unborn grandchildren.
Wow.
That's how I interpreted it.
Okay.
Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. That's an interpretation. I mean, I don't know. To me, one thing Baldwin emphasized was context. What is the context of the confessions? And I very much agree with that. I want to know what exactly was said and when. And I want to know, is he on recording saying these things? Or is this something where someone else is claiming he said them? And I think that's an important distinction. Because I think if he's saying them and he's saying them intermingled with other better confessions for the prosecution, then that might raise questions. If it's a situation where he's consistently saying things that are at least accurate, verbally, and that's being recorded, and then other people are claiming he's saying kind of off the wall things, then I don't know. Those seem more like outliers, or maybe people are putting words in his mouth, or maybe people are misunderstanding what he's saying. So I guess I want to know context.
Baldwin wanted to emphasize the normalcy, for lack of a better word, of Allen's life prior to this. So he mentioned he had a wife of 30 years, he had a dog, he raised a daughter, and then he switched to talk about what prison is like. And I'm going to raise my voice here to try to mimic what Baldwin did.
All right.
Baldwin said, he endured terrible things. You're a child killer, baby killer.
Kill yourself.
Kill yourself. So he did that. He really raised his voice in the courtroom to mimic what he claims was shouted at Richard Allen. He emphasized there's no DNA or fingerprints. And then what was the big thing?
He claimed that Abby had some kind of hair in her grasp, in her hand, that doesn't match Richard Allen. What was your initial reaction to that?
it raises questions. And my first reaction to that is lawyers always phrase things very, very carefully. So he mentioned there was hair. He didn't say it was human hair. So is it animal hair?
Yeah, if it's animal hair, then it couldn't have been Richard Allen's.
And then he didn't necessarily say that the hair could be traced to any other suspect. So is it Abby's own hair? Is it Libby's hair? Is it family hair? Is it the hair of an unknown male? Was it even tested? These are questions I would have, and I would imagine we would get answers to those in the trial.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it could be highly significant if it's one of those things, and it could be completely insignificant if it's not. And so it's hard, but that was very exciting for the media. The media is probably going to run with that mostly as I think the lead story based on what we kind of saw the reaction. And that's the goal. But I mean, I guess I'm just like, love to know more, would love to know how that was examined. And to me, hair is one of those types of DNA where that's a little bit murkier. So I think there's different levels of DNA when you're looking at a crime scene. If someone's blood is at a crime scene or their semen, bodily fluids, then that does raise a lot of questions about how did that get there? Like, was there a violent struggle? Was there sexual intercourse? Whatnot. When it comes to things like touch DNA, well, you know, if I put my hand on your car, you drive away and get murdered, then, you know, maybe I was just leaning on it in a parking lot somewhere. It doesn't mean I was directly involved necessarily. But in hair's kind of like that where you can have it be carried by other people. You know, if you're living together in close proximity, we've seen that with the Long Island serial killer case where the suspect's wife's hair is at the scene, but, you know, investigators have made it clear they don't think she's directly involved in the murders. So it's like, I guess hair, it depends more on the context. So would be curious to know, but certainly something that would be good to learn during trial. An unanswered question.
Baldwin also mentioned that ballistics is a bunch of bunk. So a lot of this trial is going to be about trying to question or call into doubt the ballistics evidence.
Oh, yeah, because that is something that's a big deal for the prosecution. They kind of, you know, that kind of is something that their case, you know, he mentioned it, McClellan mentioned it in his mini opening statement. Did you catch his Baldwin's Gertrude Stein moment? Data is data is data is data.
I did not.
So the thing that he thinks is hard data is Libby's phone. Libby's phone's going to bust this thing wide open. I think what he's talking about there, and I may be totally wrong, so just note that this is speculation on my part, but from what we've seen from the defense team in the past and in past hearings, is that they're very interested in this idea that the girls may have been abducted from the scene and then brought back and killed much later than anyone thought. And they talk about how around 4 a.m. on February 14th, 2017, before the girls were found after they disappeared, that Libby's phone switched on. And what they claim, and what they've claimed, without any real information from experts, is that that could only happen if the phone was turned on by somebody. Now, when we look into it, the truth seems more complicated. It seems like, I don't know. But they're saying the phone is a really big deal. So they're writing that check and in some form, whether that's because of, you know, what I mentioned where like, oh, this proves there was another, you know, a killer and could Richard Allen have really gone back to the scene? Or maybe it's something else completely different and they're just kind of introducing it now. So I guess it's unclear, but they think Libby's phone is going to have something big. Or I should say that's what they're saying.
That's what they're saying. After that, Gull mentioned that the jury will have supervised family days on Sundays. And then it was time for round one. I don't know how much detail we need to go into on these rounds because a lot of it is repetitive.
McClellan dropped the Frosty example. Did you notice that?
Yeah. He did not use the Frosty example today.
What do we make of this? No, I'm just kidding. I imagine they're going to mix it up, you know, and whatever. But, you know, it's kind of more of the same. I feel like we heard a lot of people talk about they don't want to be away from their kids. There's people who are young parents. There's people who have really important work stuff coming up. A lot of people have caregiving issues. There's just all kinds of things that would make people say, this is not a good time for me, and I do not feel I can do this. And so McClelland always seemed to take care to really try to engage with people about that, and never seemed pushy, seemed very much like, I want to understand what you need so we cannot force you into a situation where your life's going to be wrecked or whatever.
Rosie handled the first round for the defense. I thought at first he did a much better job than he did yesterday. What did you think?
Yeah, at one point he was like, kidding with one of the jurors, like, oh, you're a rule follower, you're one of those guys. Like, he seemed to be a little more relaxed in the beginning, which was good and an improvement over yesterday, where I felt he was absolutely by far the weakest link out of everybody. To the point where he literally I made all sorts of faux pas. It wasn't like, oh, you're just not as good as like McClelland, Baldwin, Auger. It was like you're saying awkward things that seem to be making people uncomfortable.
The rule follower line to me didn't come across to me. Maybe it came across to you and everyone else. Maybe it came across as a joke to you. To me, it sounded a bit condescending.
It was kind of condescending, in fairness. Okay, I guess I'm just like, when a guy is trying, he seemed like he was trying at least.
And then he had another moment where the defense kept on bringing up the fact, during this trial, we're going to be laughing a lot over at our defense table.
It's going to be,
and you can't blame us for that.
Richard Allen's going to be doing a stand-up routine, and we're going to be laughing our heads off to support him. I mean, what are they preparing us for? All they have to say is like, Richard Allen is not you. Richard Allen has a lot of stuff going on, and if he doesn't react the way you think he should, maybe be open-minded about that. I don't know why we're chuckling and guffawing and slapping our knees. It's just gallows humor, folks. What?
And so when he tried to make this point in this first round, he said, sometimes in a tough situation, it helps to add a little levity. And then he paused for a moment and he said, do you know what levity is? Do you remember that?
I cringed. Like, I mean, why try to brag about your diction subtly to a group of jurors? Like, why do you need to do that? You know what I mean? With gallows humor, at least you could say, well, maybe some people wouldn't know the phrase. I don't know. Like, that's pretty commonly used. But with his manner, he has a tone problem. Baldwin is better at kind of being a little bit direct with people, but in a way where you don't feel he's talking down to them. Whereas with Rosie, it's like he's peering down his nose at these people and he's salt of the earth jurors, you don't even know what the meaning of levity. What is he doing?
Let me have my little amusements with my...
Let me have my amusements with my clients. We must revel in the gallows humor. And if we are laughing, do not scoff at us. Do you know what scoff means? I don't. It just he's not good at this. Why was he doing this? Why was he in charge? I don't know.
He's good at other things.
Baldwin is better at this. I would say Auger is better at this. Anyone on the team would have been better at this.
I think if you want to have a good, tough cross-examination, Rosie's your man.
Yeah, get Rosie for that. Get Rosie to grill people on the stand. He's good at that. He's aggressive. We've heard people who've had him either in family court or in different cases he's done talk about he's a pit bull. And we have a pit bull ourselves, so we're not saying like they're inherently bad dogs. But it's like you want to have the more aggressive person do things that suit their strengths, right? It's like a relay race. I used to swim, okay? Like, to use a stupid example, I was a competitive swimmer, and I was somebody who specialized in breaststroke. That's a type of stroke in swimming that you do. And if you threw me in the backstroke, oh my God, I would have been a disaster. I would have come in last. So you have me do what I'm good at, and then other people on the team can do what they're good at, and maybe we win the relay race, or at least come in a respectable third. So, that's what you want to do, and I don't know how they could have missed that, because it doesn't seem subtle.
No.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
So at the end of this round, we got 3 new jurors. And you will remember, I'm sure, that we said we needed 4. So we are very, very close. And then there was a 15-minute break. And then we were all back for another round. And again, a lot of similarity in Prosecutor McClelland's portion. He also talked about experts. He said, well, how would you determine if an expert is credible? Would you consider their education and experience? Did you want to say any more about his contributions to the round?
Tell me if I was picking up on this. I felt like generally, pretty consistently, the jurors responded well in McClelland. The prospective jurors, I should say. Yes. People were laughing, nodding, eye contact, engaged, leaning forward in their seats. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying generally I saw a positive reception to what he was doing. It seemed like what he was doing was working. He was a little bit self-deprecating, but still confident, balancing out that and trying to kind of get people to make his points for him, which is good because when you're doing that, then they feel like it's their idea and they feel like, oh man, I made a really good point. Like you're kind of having them take up your cause.
Right.
Right? Where it's like, explain to us, like, why is CSI not that realistic? Like I don't know if he asked that, but kind of just getting them to get the point and like make it their own. That's sort of what voir dire is all about to a certain extent. So I felt like they were receptive. I didn't really see him bomb in these rounds.
I thought he performed yesterday and today at a consistently high level.
And you know what? That's also impressive because he was the only one doing it. He was the voir dire guy, which I think was smart because everyone got to know him. Everyone was like, this guy's in charge. This is the Carroll County prosecutor. We know him. Maybe we like him. Positive first impression going into things. That he's in a good place with a lot of this. And so it made sense, and his energy didn't really seem to lag that much, maybe a little bit, but understandably so because he was doing all of them.
Baldwin, he did the next round for the defense.
Yes, he did the same thing. And here's the thing, like I think everybody was like, we told people the other day, we're like, it's very similar to what he did in Randy Small and voir dire, and I think people were like, oh, okay, well, And then today he did the same exact thing, and people were like, oh. And that's not like, I think some people had a negative impression of that. Like, he's doing the same thing. It's like a stump speech. He doesn't have to like keep reinventing the wheel just to impress the people in the gallery. He's trying to impress the jurors who haven't seen this, or the prospective jurors who haven't seen this before. So it makes sense to do sort of the same thing.
Yeah, the prospective jurors are the audience.
Yeah, it's not, he's not there to entertain us. Okay. Like, so, I think that it's not repetitive. It's just like doing what works for him.
He talked a lot about the presumption of innocence, which means that as Richard Allen is sitting at the defense table, he must be considered legally innocent. And he wanted to make sure people understood that. And he even said, well, even if you come to the conclusion that he's probably guilty of these crimes, you would be required to vote him not guilty. How do you feel about that? And so I wanted to make, did you want to say something?
No, go ahead, please.
I wanted to make a couple of observations about that. First of all, what he said was absolutely correct. And if you serve on a jury, you don't have a verdict form that's multiple choice. It's not like innocent, well, maybe guilty, probably guilty, not guilty, guilty. All you have is a person is either not guilty or they're guilty. And in a legal sense, you cannot vote a person guilty unless the prosecution has proven to you beyond a reasonable doubt with admissible evidence that that person is in fact guilty. And if they don't meet that standard, you're required to vote them not guilty. You're not saying they're innocent. There's a reason why the verdict is not written that way. The verdict is not described as innocent. You're saying not guilty. And when you're saying there again is you do not believe that the state met their burden of proving that this person is guilty. You can indeed feel that the person on trial probably is guilty. And you can walk out of that courtroom and tell people you think he's probably guilty. But unless you're convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he is in fact guilty, you must vote not guilty. Again, you're not voting innocent. You're just saying they didn't prove it. So all of that is true. But I also think it's interesting that he and others kept on returning to this point. Well, even if you think he's probably guilty, best case scenario, you think he's probably guilty, you have to vote to acquit.
He's probably maybe guilty, but, you might think that but don't worry about it.
That did not suggest to me, at least, a high level of confidence in their case.
Yeah, even if your vibes, guys, is that he's really, really probably guilty, if still keep in mind that you don't have to vote that way. In addition to that, I think it can be confusing for people because I think no one outside the legal profession necessarily, unless, you're into true crime, right, necessarily thinks about things like constitutional innocence. So I think he kind of phrased the question in a way, I don't know whether it was designed to confuse people or maybe kind of get people talking, but it was you have to believe he's innocent now. And people are looking at this guy thinking, well, maybe he killed them, maybe he didn't, I just don't know. But what he was trying to get them to do was say, I understand that the state has not yet met its burden because we haven't had the trial yet, and if they don't meet it during trial, then So that's a concept that not many people necessarily, I think they thought he was asking them to say, let me do a psychic move now and figure it out. So I think that can be confusing to people, but I think he was just trying to get that, Can I talk about, and I think Baldwin's style where he's better than Rosie here is that he's, he talks about, he was talking about one point about constitutional innocence, is that kind of a mind blower? He's kind of oh man, what's going on? He's more, how would you say it? Not befuddled. I don't mean that, but he's more of trying to kind of get on people's level a little bit at points and kind of be whoa, I know this is really heavy, man. Kind of a little dramatic.
Baldwin grew up in southern Indiana. He feels very comfortable around that milieu of just average, regular people. I grew up in southern Indiana. I feel comfortable around average people. I
don't think being from southern Indiana made him better at voir dire than Rosie, who's from Logansport. Rosie's not some New York City lawyer coming in and saying, you people.
Rosie always comes in dressed in these really expensive-looking suits, and Baldwin just seems like a more accessible person. Baldwin seems like a guy, maybe it's an illusion, maybe he's playing a role.
He is.
But he seems like a guy you can be in a small town in southern Indiana, walk into a restaurant, and he's there talking with his friends.
These are all trial attorneys. They're all playing a role.
Yes.
And there can be situations where being the kind of fancy suit guy who, is kind of aggressive is really good. It's just that I think Baldwin's works better for voir dire in Indiana.
He reminds me of a lot of people I've met, just regular folks,
And so, that's helpful for this when you're connecting with people. And one thing, can I just say this? We've seen a shift, and I'd be curious if this carries over to trial. So in all the pre-trial, I felt like the defense at times was practically walking up to the line of there's an Odinist conspiracy. Who knows if it involves state actors? They didn't quite go that far, but I felt they were really, and everyone's the subject of a Frank's motion. Everyone's lying. These people are lying to cover things up. And now suddenly we've pivoted from law enforcement is perhaps a bastion of Odinism sympathies and lies and framing an innocent man. We've gone from that to Andy Baldwin's quote from today, quote, "We're going to respectfully, aggressively go after the police investigation." So what do you make of that? Do you think that, first of all, what they were doing before was respectfully, aggressively going after the police investigation? Or do you think it was a lot of ad hominem attacks on people and basically hint, they're liars, you can't trust them, they're trying to frame our client? Because that's what I saw in those pretrial motions.
I don't know if the tone in the trial is going to be softer than it was in the pretrial motions, but I do know you set expectations, and if you tell people, well, I'm very respectful, even if you then punch somebody in the jaw, maybe they think, well, he's being respectful.
Well, that maybe. I think maybe they're going to, I don't know if they're going to tone it down. I mean, we've said from the beginning it's usually better to attack the police investigation and point out mistakes rather than try to, like, latch on to some conspiracy that you don't really have any evidence for.
Yeah, here's the thing. The defense, as they pointed out, they don't need to solve the crime. They don't need to prove to you that the crime was committed by someone else. So think of it this way. The prosecution basically has to build a house, and that house is the case against the defendant. And you have to believe that that house is sturdy and is going to stand. The defense doesn't have to build a house of their own. All they have to do is go over to the prosecution's house and, like, kick the walls and shove them and knock them around and see if they can knock it down.
Yes. Which is why it's been so baffling at times to watch them construct, their Odinism palace next door to the prosecution's house instead of focusing on areas where they might demolish the prosecution's house and then claiming that the Odinism house was so sturdy and amazing as we all watched it fall apart in real time after a single rainstorm. So that was surprising because if that's all they have to do, then you would think that they would be really focusing on getting the bulldozer ready, not like doing whatever the heck they've been doing for a year. And frankly, overselling a lot of things that then turned out not to be true. And that's why, frankly, like, even though there was some exciting things said in this session today, I'm kind of at a point where it's like, okay, well, we'll see what happens at trial. Because I'm not really willing to be like, wow, there's hair in Abby's hands, so that must mean, like, some killer is, matched to it, and it's, going to be whatever. It's going to be a huge deal, because I know that in the past when I've thought things like that, then it didn't really kind of play out that way. So I'm curious to see what happens. I'm open-minded, but I'm also at a place where I feel like a little bit skeptical because of some of these detours that we've had due to the defense.
You know what I realized? The hardest part about building a website isn't making it look good. It's getting what's in my head onto the page. But I've been playing with the new Wix Harmony editor, and I'm impressed. You can literally just tell it what you want, or if you're picky like me, jump in and move things around yourself. The nice part is you can hop between AI and hands-on editing, so you end up with a site that actually looks the way you pictured it. Try it out for free at wix.com/harmony.
When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
So Baldwin then wrapped up, and after, I don't know if we've mentioned this, but after each side has their half hour of questioning of the panel, the attorneys get a chance to confer and decide what to do. This would take anywhere 5, 10, even 15 minutes. And on this occasion, during this time when the attorneys were conferring, Judge Gull had an officer of the court come into the press and public area and remove a closed bottle of water from a reporter's bag. Somehow, I guess she had spotted it, and immediately just throw it away. And I just ask you to keep in mind that yesterday, the judge had the session go on for 6, 7 hours with no break. So I don't think it's unreasonable for a person to bring in a closed bottle of water to
and
avoid
keep it in
dehydration.
And keep it in their bag.
Yes.
I mean,
so I yeah.
Yeah. And they did get mad. Apparently some people were eating in the courtroom. I didn't see that. They did reference it. Other people told me that they saw it. So,
well, perhaps they could have been reprimanded for eating instead of this closed bottle of water being removed from someone's bag. In the coming days, I think we'll return to this topic. We'll talk a little bit more later. Judge Gull is not very popular with the press, and just be aware of that. So after that happened, one juror was selected. So you're thinking, well, Kevin, you said we needed 4. We selected 3.
Did we need 5?
Okay, we needed 5.
Yeah.
And now we got them.
We got them.
We're done. No. Judge Gull said, well, let's break for lunch, and then we'll come back and select the rest of the jury panel.
And everyone's walking out like, what? I thought we got 16. And then people were like, maybe are we going for 17 just in case?
No one knew. No one knew what was going on. That was not
least of all us. We didn't know what was going on either. All we knew is the math wasn't adding up. We tried to take, it's hard because you're, all the jurors. It's sort of like the TV show The Prisoner. Nobody has their names for privacy reasons. That's not why it's the case on The Prisoner. But anyway, I digress. Everyone has a number. They're giving you a number and taking away your name. And then that's how you're referred to. So it's hard to be like, okay, like 34, 35, 50, but I felt like I was at least aware of how many we had. And I knew at a certain point we were at 16. And so it was confusing then when we kept going after that, because it was like, don't we have it? Are we going for more? Like, what is happening? And I think a lot of other people felt that way. No one really had clear answers.
So we have a lunch break. And the Lincoln Tower Grill, by the way, was closed. So I did not get my grilled cheese sandwich. But after lunch, we came back, and there was another round. Again, kind of repetitive. Do you want to talk about Prosecutor McClelland?
Again, it was just sort of the same thing. This one, I felt like the panel was less friendly to him. Not in the sense that they were unfriendly, just more of like a lot of people, this is one concept that McClelland tried to drill down on a lot, which makes sense. When you say to people, when you're deciding on how to weigh in on a murder case, do you want to do the standard of beyond all reasonable doubt or beyond all doubt? And a lot of people get excited and they're like, beyond all doubt, it's the most important thing. Like we're deciding a man's fate and it must be beyond all doubt. And then McClelland will basically kind of walk them back and like, well, what does that mean? Like, because it's not super realistic that the juror is going to be able to go back in time and watch what happened, or that suddenly there's going to be a video footage produced of what happened.
And also, let's be realistic in this age of AI. Even if you had video footage of Anya stealing cereal, it could be false footage created by AI. And if anyone wants to send in such footage, please do so.
No, don't. And also, but thank you for giving me that excuse. It's one of those things where that is not a reasonable standard, and very few murderers would ever be convicted if you said beyond all doubt. Because all doubt might include the very remote possibility that some serial killer happened to come into town and do the deed unbeknownst to everyone without leaving a trace. That can happen. But that doesn't mean that that's a reasonable doubt if there's no evidence the serial killer was there, and maybe there's evidence that he was somewhere else at the time. So, like, the standard should not be beyond all doubt. I mean, am I crazy? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, you're articulating it well.
I mean, it's ridiculous, and like, frankly, I mean, I don't fault people, but like, it is disturbing when people say that, or when people say essentially, well, he was arrested, so he's probably guilty. I feel like people like, those are two sides of the same coin. When people are just making assumptions just because someone got arrested that they must be guilty, or that they weren't overcharged, or that they couldn't be innocent, or that the police can't make a mistake, or prosecutors can't make a mistake, that is disturbing, because it's like you just have so much faith in the system and just assume the worst about somebody just because this happened to happen. And you're not asking questions, and you're just going along with it, and you could end up seriously hurting an innocent person. On the other side, when people are saying basically like, I don't feel like I can make any sort of decision based on common sense and evidence unless somebody literally like hands me on a silver platter every single possible piece of evidence, that is not reality, okay? That does not happen. There are so many cases that don't have good DNA or usable DNA. There are so many cases that do not have good fingerprints or usable fingerprints. There's a lot of cases that don't look like an episode of CSI. And that does not mean that those are weak cases or that those shouldn't result in convictions if the evidence is there otherwise. Both are just too unreasonable. And that's why part of selecting a jury is the defense and the prosecutors are often going to be seeking people in the middle who are not super biased either way. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Anyways.
So the idea in theory is if the prosecution gets to go in there and try to weed out jurors that they think might be prejudiced towards the defense, and the defense gets to weed out jurors that they think might be prejudiced towards the prosecution, then we're going to end up with an utterly fair jury. So after McClelland, it was Jennifer Auger's opportunity. She returned to the theme of, well, even if you think he probably did it, you got to vote to acquit, which is absolutely accurate.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that round...
I don't know if that sounds super convincing to the average juror, though.
Yeah, I don't think it does.
But I understand, but they got to say it. I mean...
They got to say it. That's why I tried to stress. I was worried that it wouldn't sound super convincing to people in the audience. So I want to stress that when Jennifer Auger says this, when Andrew Baldwin says this, they are absolutely telling the truth.
How do you think Auger did today?
I thought she did good.
Again...
Better than Rosie.
Yep. I think Rosie is off-putting to the jurors. I'm just, from looking at the way they were reacting and the way he was interacting with them, I don't think that's a good fit.
I think the jurors like Prosecutor McClelland. I think the jurors like Baldwin. I think the jurors like Auger.
I concur.
I don't think they like Rosie.
No. And I'm not saying it to be mean. It's just that you don't use him in that capacity because it could be alienating.
So then, out of that round, we get another juror, which technically, for all we know, means we now have 17 of the 16. And then Gull has a private conference with the attorneys and then says, okay, we're recessed. And she disappears. So question number one is, are we just recessed for a little bit? Are we coming back? Because you said earlier there was going to be other motions that were going to be considered today. And if they're not being considered today, are they being considered tomorrow? Or are they being considered Thursday? And also, why the heck do we have 17 jurors instead of 16? Very, very confusing. And I think I've said in the past that I feel that this judge does not take seriously her role to provide public access to this. I think I've said I don't think she cares about that angle of it. I think it is getting to the point where I'm beginning to suspect that she actively wants to impede the flow of information. Because this is something that would have been very basic to say, here's when the next hearing will be. We're not going to cover these motions today. We're covering them here. And here's why we picked 17 jurors. So what had to happen was a group of reporters...
Yeah, there was a mini scrum.
...descended on the attorneys to try to get information from them. And I can tell you the attorneys seemed uncomfortable with talking to the reporters because they don't want to anger Judge Gull.
Also, it's not their jobs to do that,
And I will say before I say anything else, that my experience of Judge Gull's team is that they seem scared of her. And these attorneys, at least from the outside, seem scared of her and what she might do. And I would think generally it's fair to say that a good leader is not feared by his subordinates or her subordinates. She's respected by them.
Well, it's also just, okay. Here's my take on Gull's views on the media. Again, we don't know what's in her heart or her head. I'm just what we're observing. I think this is somebody who has no patience anymore for this case in the sense I'm actually not talking about the legal process because frankly, I agree with you. I don't really feel like there's been anything super untoward there. I think the whole situation around removing Baldwin and Rosie was obviously incredibly problematic, and the Supreme Court of Indiana ruled on that. But, ultimately that's in the past, and they sort of absolved her for everything around that. So looking at it since then, I don't think there's been a lot of things. You mentioned slow to do rulings. I agree with that, but there's been nothing where I'm like, whoa, red flag. But around the media stuff, I just think there's been simmering resentment, perhaps, that I've sensed where it's like, I have to deal with all this. And to a certain extent, I'm trying to be sympathetic here. I can understand where you're like, all these people are camping out and focusing so much on this case. But the thing is, at the end of the day, it's not your role as judge to judge that. It's to accommodate the strong interest in a way that is, and let me just say, I actually think if you do a little for the media, it takes off the pressure. And here's an example. If you have cameras in the courtroom or an audio feed or a media room where reporters can come and go freely, people are getting better, more substantive access to the case, and maybe there is less chaos. Just maybe.
Yes. Her own decisions have made the chaos worse. The state this case is in is on her shoulders. I feel that in the eyes of the public, the Indiana legal system looks awful because of some of the things she's done. And I'll mention at one point, she'd said people, if you need to leave during the session, you can leave, but you just can't come back. And at one point, a reporter stood to go, and she turns and yells at him for standing up. Like, what? So in any case, it was eventually conveyed that the reason they had to pick a 17th juror was because one of the other jurors was excused. They did not say which juror was excused. They did not say why that juror was excused. And this information did not come from the judge. And also, the information was conveyed that the next hearing is scheduled to be on Thursday. Presumably, it will deal with all of the emotions that Judge Gold said would be taken care of today. I don't know. It's still, there's a lot of confusion. Is there going to be a session this Saturday?
No one knows.
No one knows. This is basic communication. And I want to say that the whole idea of having court on Saturdays, even for a limited time, feels like a logistical nightmare. I'm no expert, but I imagine that to open up a courthouse on a day it's ordinarily closed, like on a Saturday, you're going to have to bring in a lot of people, a lot of security people, maybe even pay them time and a half. I don't know. And I imagine that is going to add an awful lot to the final bill that Carroll County is going to be asked to pay, and it's not going to really return much.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate, I can see on a human level being just sick of it, or being like the media is doing like they're doing too much and people are scrambling all over this, and I can understand it making somebody grumpy to a certain extent, because I feel sometimes it makes me grumpy. I'm like, oh my gosh, people just get so obsessed with every little thing and they run with it and they post on Facebook, and it's like, yeah, that is exhausting as someone who's reported on it, as someone who's been on both sides, where I've been the person who's interested and then the person who's like, okay, everyone's kind of freaking out about nothing. But as judge, you need to deal with it, because if you don't deal with it, then I think the situation gets actively worse. I would liken it in a stupid metaphor. If you ever go in the ocean and if you try to, and you've been in the ocean too, Kevin, tell me if this is off base, but if you try to, I remember when I was little, I was told, don't lock your knees if you're hit by a big wave, kind of roll with it a little bit, kind of move, adjust, and then you won't get knocked down by it. And in this situation, it feels like the public access element is getting knocked down because it's very restrictive and there's not a lot of flexibility. And in the end, having worse coverage because people have to leave and can't come back, or because there's only a few select outlets that are even in the press seats, and then they're using pools, and it's just not ideal. And all that just emboldens more chaos, because then people are just saying whatever they want, and the public is turning to them instead because they're unencumbered by all these rules or the rules of fairness and accuracy. So I just, it's unfortunate. And I want to reiterate that I think these problems are pretty much exclusively, it's bizarre because it's almost exclusively a public access, public relations, press relations problem, as opposed to a legal problem. So I understand that that's not necessarily the expertise, but we knew that this was coming. We knew that this was high profile. Allen County has had months to get ready, and that is not what has happened. And that is not on Carroll County. It's not on the prosecution team. It's not on the defense team. It is on Allen County.
Yeah, people have criticized the defense team for different things. Ultimately, the person who bears the responsibility for the condition of the case.
When you say condition of the case, what do you mean? Why don't you clarify that?
I feel Richard Allen's rights have been protected. That's not a problem. When I talk about condition of the case, I mean the awful public access. I feel that in years to come, people are not going to accept whatever the verdict is because they weren't given a chance to see the evidence. And in our country, we have a process where you're supposed to see the evidence. And Judge Gull is completely neglecting that to the detriment of everyone. I think the people of the state of Indiana have the right to see the evidence and come to an informed conclusion. I think they have the right to see and understand what arguments the prosecution makes. I think they have the right to see and understand the arguments the defense makes. Instead, they're not getting that. The best they're getting is they're getting this information filtered through us and other people. And that seems unnecessary. And I feel that this level of secrecy is creating the impression, the false impression, but it is creating an impression that there's something shady going on here, something secretive, something corrupt. Because generally speaking, when things happen in darkness, it's for a reason. It's because people are hiding something. And the fact is, I feel that the case itself is being done in a fine way, but it's creating the appearance of something that's not there, and it's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. It's deeply frustrating and bizarre to kind of go into it and see things pretty much proceeding normally at this point, and then step out. And it's like chaos because everyone, what's going on in there? You know,
and keep in mind, reporters are human beings. They have reasons to have negative feelings towards Judge Gull. And I think later this week, we're going to talk about the press pass process. And so because they've had negative experiences with Judge Gull, I think that makes them more inclined to accept criticism of her and maybe even reflect that in their coverage.
And here's the thing. I think the whole situation and the whole way it's been structured is not ideal, to say the least. But I think at the very least, we could get more clear directions from the judge in the courtroom, perhaps saying things like, okay, everyone in the gallery, stay seated until X happens, and then you can get up. Like, work with people. Give them instructions on what you want them to do, preempt any issues, and then deal with it. And I think that would go a long way. The clarity and the communication would go a long way to at least having things operate as smoothly as they possibly could under the current process, which again is not an ideal process, but let's try to make, just yelling at people and things like that, maybe just give some clear instructions, because half the time really people are confused and I don't think people want to cause problems, but if you're told essentially you can get up but you just can't come back, but then you're yelled at for getting up, then that's not clear.
And as we see when we discuss the press pass process, there were many times when Ani and I in particular were told something, you can take this to the bank, and then we couldn't take it to the bank.
That check bounced many times.
Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's it. But anyways, thanks everyone for listening. We appreciate it. So voir dire is done. What we're assuming is that, or what we've been told, what we all walked out thinking is that there's nothing tomorrow, so we're not going to do an episode tomorrow because nothing is going on. There's no court session. And then Thursday, I guess we'll see what happens.
If there's a court session, we'll tell you about it and maybe talk about press passes. And then Friday, in theory, is opening statements. And then Saturday, there might be a hearing, there might not be. Who knows? Your guess is as good as ours.
But anyways, thanks all for listening. And just keep in mind as we get into the trial portion of this, if you're planning on coming to Delphi, just be aware it's a real community, real people. These little girls, their deaths had a huge impact here. And let's all just be respectful of that going into this community that suffered a profound loss and is now going to have to deal with what may turn into a circus. Right. And so, yeah, let's think about that.
Support local businesses.
Yes. And thank you very much. Appreciate all of you listening. And I guess we'll
talk again soon.
We'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much for listening to The Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com patreon.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for the Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.